Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Syazwani, Binti Adnan, and I will be presenting my final year project titled Investigating the Antibacterial Activity of Thermal Treated Kelulut Honey produced by Heterotrigona ITAMA and also Geniotrigona thoracica. Okay, for abstract, Kelulut honey is nature's gift which contain many beneficial compounds conferring therapeutic effect such as antibacterial. However, the antibacterial properties are influenced by the geographical origin, nectar source, climate, and also processing method. So the heat utilization can cause a detrimental impact towards the thermolabile compound, which also may decrease the antibacterial potency of the honey. Therefore, this study was focused on investigating the impact of thermal treated for 50, 60, 70 for 5, 10, 20 and 30 minutes of holding time on the antibacterial activity of kelulut honey for both species from the same locality. Generally, thermal treatment decreased the antibacterial activity of both kelulut honey against all strains tested. So then the MIC of the concentration of ITAMA are lower than thoracica. And then the FTIR analysis shows the presence of a compound which may contribute to the antibacterial activity exhibited by the samples. Okay, as for introduction, honey has been utilized as the sweetening and aromatic component in countless meal and beverage. The honey is generally heated by the thermal treatment at temperature over 50 degrees, which is one of the most conventional technique. So heat is applied to the honey can cause harm to many thermolabile components and contribute to protein denaturation and the activation of several enzymes. Honey production is directly correlated not only to the availability of flowers in the surrounding environment, but also to the quality of the food that the bee collected. Then this project was conducted to investigate the effect of thermal treatment on antibacterial activity of two kelulut honey from the same locality. Then it is to determine MIC for both honey species and do the FTIR screening of the honey. As for the literature review, in Malaysia, it is reported that kelulut honey consists of 33 species of stingless bee, with only 2 species that were commercially raised for the honey production, which is Geniotrigona thoracica and also Heterotrigona ITAMA. These both of honey species has its own similarity and can be differentiated by the morphological properties. The kelulut honey can be employed as a pharmaceutical formula antibacterial component owing to its antimicrobial and antiseptic properties. Then the pathogen bacteria was also known as infectious agent because they cause infection. They consist of gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. As for the thermal treatment is a technique of food sterilization in which food is heated at sufficiently high temperature to kill bacteria and enzymes. Okay, as for the antimicrobial susceptibility test, it was performed to identify if the bacteria has developed a resistance to various antibiotics. As for MIC determination, this minimum inhibitory concentration can be described as the lowest concentration of the antibacterial activity which will be used to inhibit the growth of bacteria. Then FTIR for transformed infrared spectroscopy can be defined as the method that is used to determine the infrared spectrum of emission, absorption, and also photoconductivity of solid, gas, and liquid. As for the methodology, the sample kelulut honey is collected at Geniotrigona farm at Kampung Nelas Jasin Melaka, where there are 2 types of honey is collected, which is Heterotrigona ITAMA and also Geniotrigona thoracica. Okay, then the kelulut honey is treated by heat for parameter 50, 60 and 70 degrees Celsius, and for the holding time 5, 10, 20 and also 30 minutes of holding time. Okay, next for the next procedure, as we perform the antimicrobial susceptibility testing, where the preparation must be considered, such as preparation of modulated agar, nutrient broth, and also subculture bacteria. And when on the day of the testing performed, the bacterial suspension must be compared with the Macpherson standard. Then after the Macpherson standard is shows a suitable parameter, then it is the antibacterial activity is then performed. Okay, as for the MIC, we use broth macrodilution, as we known as serial dilution method, where the honey is diluted into different concentration. Then 100 microliter of bacterial suspension is added into the test tube for each of the different concentration. Okay, for then it is incubated, and the first test tube that shows a clear test tube, it is known as MIC, as it shows that it can inhibit the growth of bacteria in the test tube. Okay, as for the FTIR analysis, the FTIR analysis is used to identify the phenol content. Then it is by using FTIR spectroscopy. As for the result obtained, the graph obtained, we use know it all software, as it can produce an overlay graph, which make us easier to compare the data for the discussion. Okay, as for the result and discussion, the antimicrobial susceptibility testing is calculated by using statistical analysis by ANOVA one way, by documented in Minitab software. Then it can be identified that there is 2 samples of Kelulut honey, which shows a significant value, which is as for ITAMA, it shows on as aureus 100% concentration, and as for Trigona, Heterotrigona thoracica, it shows on the E. coli for 100% concentration. Okay, it can be seen from the graph comparison. ITAMA Kelulut honey shows a higher inhibition zones compared to thoracica, and as for the thermal treatment aspect, the higher the temperature and the longer the time that the heat is exposed to the honey, it will reduce the antibacterial activity of Kelulut honey, as it can be seen that the inhibition zone become reduced. Okay, as for the bacteria strain, different bacteria strain used, negative strain shows a higher inhibition zone compared to positive bacteria strain, as the negative bacteria strain has a thin peptidoglycan, as this peptidoglycan is act as physical barrier of the cell. So negative bacteria strain is more susceptible to antibacterial activity compared to positive bacteria strain. Okay. As for the untreated, untreated and thermotreated, it can be seen that Kelulut honey that is not treated by heat, by temperature, higher temperature of heat, has a higher inhibition zone compared to the sample that is treated by thermal. Okay, as for the determination of MIC, for the thermally treated sample, there is 2 samples that is used from the previous testing that is selected, as it shows the higher concentration, as it is for 70 degree 10 minutes and 50 degree 10 minutes. Okay, as for the determination of MIC, it is showed that ITAMA shows a lower MIC value, which is 6.25% compared to THORACICA, which is 25% of concentration. So ITAMA shows a better value as it only needs low concentration only to inhibit the growth of bacteria. So it can be used in industry, and it is more safe, more economic. Okay, as for the FTIR analysis, from the graph obtained from on the left, it shows for the sample of Heterotrigona ITAMA according 50, 60 and 70. Okay, from that we can see most of the three temperature shows the same pattern of peak, as it shows the presence of alcohol, amine, alkene, and also other hydroxyl functional group, and it shows the presence of the functional group, as we can see from the peak and from the peak for every wavelength. Okay, as for the THORACICA, we can see the difference between the ITAMA and also THORACICA. Okay, as for THORACICA, there is some peak on some sample, especially for sample for 30 degree of thermal treatment. It can be seen that there is no peak that is identified, and it shows an uncertain result of the presence of the peak that we can see. So it is from compared for the ITAMA and THORACICA, as we can see, ITAMA shows the presence, most of the ITAMA shows the presence of the functional group, as it can shows the phenolic compound, as the phenolic compound may contribute to the functional of the antibacterial activity potency of the Kelulut honey itself. As for the conclusion, the study indicates that Heterotrigona ITAMA Kelulut honey has a higher inhibition zone compared to Geniotrigona thoracica Kelulut honey. As for the MIC, the determination of MIC for ITAMA and thoracica Kelulut honey indicates that ITAMA shows it only need 6.25 of concentration compared to thoracica, as it need 25% of concentration to inhibit the growth of bacteria. As for the FTIR, ITAMA shows the presence of functional groups such as alcohol, violet ether, amine, alkene, and also carboxylic acid, as it indicates the presence of phenolic content in the honey. As for thoracica, the presence of the functional group were uncertain for certain thermally treated sample, especially for 30 minutes of holding time, as the intensity of the peak absorbance was low. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.